I think these things are finally shipping. I just got one, and there's a couple of really special things about this particular Whoop product. But before I get started about that, I want to talk a little bit about Happy Model as a company. There are a lot of people out there that have formed their opinions already about Happy Model, if they're going to buy Happy Model products, if they're going to choose to support the company or not. I am part of that camp. However, I'm still going to try to do an unbiased review of this particular product. I personally am not a fan of Happy Model because they do steal ideas from people across Facebook and across YouTube, so I don't like supporting them, but they do have one particularly good aspect about them, which I have not seen any other company actually be able to pull off, except for GepRC. GepRC is probably the only one that sort of somewhat seems to be able to pull this off as well. So there's at least one person at Happy Model that is probably well versed in everything in this field and is a true hobbyist and really understands and knows what to do with the products that come out, with the advancements and everything that we have and everything that's coming out constantly. And they also have the development potential to be able to try new things and do different things and really improve things a little bit along the way. What's really special about this product, which isn't original or unique, but they have put the VTX on the flight control board and they have made it entirely plug and play. So you just plug the motors in, plug the camera in, and that's your whole build. There's no soldering, there's nothing else involved. And like I said, this is not original, this is not new, this has been done before, but it's really nice that they push to try and pull it off again with new and improved systems, new and improved methods of making these boards and making these electronics. However, that being said, Happy Model has probably the absolute worst track record of reliability of their products across the industry. They are satisfied if their failure rate of products is less than 60%. 60%. I mean, it's pretty much a gamble to buy a lot of their products. Most of the things I've used from theirs have failed within a handful of batteries or just stopped working, or if like the antenna falls off the VTX, it just burns out immediately. So really there are reliability concerns with Happy Model products. I do wish that they would improve things, even though I don't really like the company. It would be nice to have this particular kind of board with a VTX built in, with plugs across everything, that doesn't burn out, that is actually reliable. Now getting on to the actual product, this is a really nice little Whoop. It is particularly light because it has everything built into one board. It has a Runcam Nano 3, which I'll start with because that's probably the best item on this entire quad. The Runcam Nano 3, in my opinion, is the best camera per weight. The view from this camera through the goggles is very comparable to the Micro Eagle, and that is incredibly impressive for a camera that weighs 1 gram. Now, I do know that Beta has a 1/3 inch sensor, and that is what's special about this camera, is that it has a 1/3 inch sensor, just like all of the micro cameras and most of the full-size cameras in our industry that have come in through the years. And so with this larger 30-inch sensor, it has the ability to perform significantly better than pretty much all other Whoop cameras there are that have a 1/4-inch sensor. It's still not perfect. It does have this Pancake Lens on it, which in my opinion is probably the very best part, not even the sensor. And what that lens does is that it actually it gives you a really nice field of view without a whole lot of distortion. If you're used to the Whoop cameras with a really weird warping distortion, this camera does not have that at all. It has a really nice crisp picture, everything is nice and in view, and it even has really good low light ability. However, as you get lower and lower in light, to the point where you just can't really see anymore to fly, it does get a little bit blurry, and that's as a result of the type of lens that it has on the camera. It's kind of just refracting within itself and causing things to get blurry on itself, and that's just a feature of these kinds of Pancake lenses. But overall, this thing performs fantastic, and I prefer it over the Beta FPV camera because that camera handles light like a Whoop camera. It doesn't handle light like this camera, which many have said that they don't like when they're looking at a bright background with a dark foreground, which every camera suffers with that. Really, the only camera that does a good job with the bright backgrounds and dark foregrounds is going to be the Predator cameras, and I'm not a fan of any of the Nano Predators or any of the other Nano cameras because they just look grainy and low resolution. Getting on with the rest of the quad, it does have one singular board, as I pointed out. It's got 0802 25,000 kV motors, which I think around 0802 20 to 25,000 kV motors has become kind of the standard for 1S 65mm whoops. So they've done a good job speccing that motor. However, the motors are of extremely low quality and low grade. They do have, mine has some jello on it, but you can't expect perfection because Happy Model makes very, very low end everything for all their products, and I wouldn't be surprised if you just pop a motor here and there or something just falls apart randomly because of how low end the motors are. The motors that were on the trash can were probably the very worst motors I've ever seen in the industry. That being said, these motors perform totally fine, and the performance of this quad is fine. I'll talk a little bit more about the performance a little bit later. Again, like I said, everything is plug and play. It's really nice. First, let's talk about the connector here. So the connector is a PH2 connector, and they have gone with the rolled pin PH2 connector, which I can't really show clearly on camera here. Actually, no, never mind. Now I can see it in full light. This is a solid pin. Oh, wow. Okay, well, good job. That's great. They went with a solid pin PH2 connector. So clearly that person that's aware of what's going on in the market decided to use a solid pin connector. And if you look at comparisons between the solid pin PH2 and the new BT2 connector from Beta FPV, the solid pin connector actually performs very comparable to the BT2 connector, which is really impressive because the BT2 connector has much bigger pins. So in this case, you don't really need to change that connector out. I don't think the amp draw on this quad is quite enough to make a significant difference if you swap it out to the BT2 connector. So that's fantastic. Keep that on board. The frame, unfortunately, mine arrived broken already. I did not break this. I just melted it back together so the prop doesn't scrape inside the frame. And overall, everything works so far. I've flown it for 5 packs and it hasn't burnt out. Kudos to Happy Model. I hope it continues for another 500 packs. Lastly, the actual flight performance. The tune that came on this was rubbish. I'm sure it worked wherever it was that they tuned it, but I have sent quads to people that I thought had a fantastic tune, and then they flew it and said it was completely unflyable. For me, the tune that came on it was worthless, and so I retuned it really quick. I really just guessed once. Those numbers are in the description below. Free to use them if you like. Maybe it works better for you. And the quad flies great. It's got lots of power, lots of performance. The 300 milliamp battery that it comes with is totally suitable. Happy Model batteries are actually pretty good. They're not that bad. Beta batteries are way worse than Happy Model batteries. The issues with Happy Model batteries is that they just don't hold up to a whole lot of charge cycles, whereas the issues with beta batteries is that they just don't perform very well or hold up to any charge cycles. So at least the Happy Model batteries perform pretty decently. The performance of the quad is as you would expect from any other whoop. The main issue I would have with the performance, and I only know this because I have now flown the Tiny Hawk for so long, the battery swinging underneath the quad is just not optimal for the weight distribution on the quad, and that results in some kind of just weird feelings when you fly. It's hard to fully describe. You get this kind of pendulum feeling effect. It just doesn't, it feels like wants to roll back over really quick if you do go upside down. But that's really the most exaggerated way to feel the issue with it. You really do feel it all the time. When you fly a Tiny Hawk where the battery is slung underneath and the motors and props are upside down, the overall weight distribution of the quad is much better, and it's much more right in the middle of the prop line. So it really does feel a lot better in the air. It feels a lot more locked in. That being said, this thing comes with Betaflight 4.0 and 4.06 or whatever, and all the new Betaflights and all the more recent firmwares all fly really great. So really a moot point at this point. Unless you're a really high skill level pilot, then you're going to really notice it, and you really would prefer the weight distribution to be a little bit better. But the Tiny Hawks are not quite this kind of weight class and size class. I've talked to a lot of Tiny Whoop pilots at this point, and the number one thing that Nate Shutterbug FPV, or I don't think it's Shutterbug FPV, but Shutterbug, he's got a great whoop channel. He's fantastic builder, fantastic pilot. The number one thing that he would want to change or improve about whoops is the position of the battery, to move it closer to the flight control board so that you did get a little bit better weight distribution. Again, like I said, this is a really nitpicky thing, but I personally feel it. He personally feels it. I think more people feel it. If you're a really skilled pilot, you can definitely feel the difference. And yeah, overall, this product performs great, as most Happy Model products do, because they're well set up, they have all their manufacturing in line, they're making all the parts themselves, they're putting all the things together themselves. It's really easy to get a good cohesive product when you make all the parts. It's freaking impossible to get a good cohesive product when you're getting parts from one company and another company, putting it all together here, and then somebody else is checking it there, and you have no idea what's going here, and there's one person that's trying to manage it all and they can't do all. It's really hard to put things together when it's coming from so many separate areas. And the reason why Happy Model can probably pull things off is because there's probably a small group of people that are managing these products. So their products do tend to work well. They just have really, really poor reliability, which is really sad. Do with it as you will. I think it's a cool little product. I would not spend my money on it. I don't think it's worth a dime because I don't think it's going to last very long. If my opinion in that matter changes, I will put it in the description below, but I bet you I won't be updating that description anytime soon because this thing is most likely going to fail. Take care, floss your teeth, bye-bye.